Welcome to the Over to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, Heidi, we're going to be talking about navigating the loss of a child, and we know something about that because I lost Scott a long time ago, 40 years ago, your brother. So we have a couple of guests on that are going to have a lot to help us with on that topic. But before we get started with that topic, I want to tell you that my new book, Open to Love, The Secrets of Senior Dating, is out now. For those of you who have lost a partner and are looking for love, this is a book for you. My partner and my fiance, Dr. Frank Powers, and I wrote this book about our experience and about our experiences with clients finding love after the loss of a partner. So we think that you'll find it helpful. And I want to remind you all that 100% of the proceeds go to the Open to Hope Foundation with the mission of helping people find hope after loss. So get it on Amazon now. So Heidi, you want to introduce our guests?
Sure, I would love to, Mom. So like you said, we're going to be talking today about navigating the loss of a child and how you do that and how you ever find hope again after a child loss with two people that have walked this walk. So let me introduce them. So let's see, we've got Johnny Sirpilla. Johnny Sirpilla, do I say Sirpilla?
You said it perfectly.
Thank you, I'm glad. Johnny Sirpilla, he's a seasoned executive leader with a dynamic 30-year career. He is founder and CEO of Encourage LLC, specializing in leadership development. Johnny is the author of the book, Life is Hard, But I'll Be Okay, which was inspired by the death of his triplets. He is a sought-after public speaker, and as you know, Mom, he will be the keynote speaker at the Compassionate Friends National Conference in New Orleans this summer.
In July, and we'll all be there, so
Yes.
we hope you'll join us.
Absolutely. And next to him is Stephen Panus. Stephen is a publicist, sports agent, attorney, and motivational speaker. He's represented a Super Bowl champion, Indianapolis 500 winner, and international star tennis players, among others. He was president of the Jockey Club's America's Best Racing brand, and he is CEO of Twisted Hairs, which is a marketing and PR agency. Stephen wrote the book Walk On after his 16-year-old son Jake was suddenly killed as a passenger in a reckless car crash. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
Well, it's nice to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, well, we're not happy with why you're here in a way, but I know that you both are interested in helping people find hope after loss, and a loss of a child is and children is a biggie. So particularly having men here is important because Heidi and I have seen that when we go to different groups, like 60 to 70% of people will be females. A lot of books written by females, but so we're happy to have you guys here talking about your grief and loss world. And I'd like to start with you, Stephen. Can you talk a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, so my son Jake was 16 years old. He went away with his girlfriend and her family for a weekend getaway to Block Island, which is a small island off the coast of Rhode Island. And they were drinking at the beach, and his girlfriend was the driver of the vehicle, and she went off the road. She was speeding, driving recklessly, and they crashed. And there was 5 kids in the vehicle, and Jake was the only one who died. There was another boy who was injured.
Wow, a lot of issues around that. Well, it sounds familiar to you, Heidi, right?
It does, because in my situation, in our situation, my brother was the passenger, my cousin was driving. They were both teenagers. They weren't drinking, but it was raining, and the car did hydroplane, and so I think that the road conditions were part of it, and hit the side of a bridge and blew up. So yes, it's pretty traumatic. I mean, they both died in that situation, so it sounds like in your situation, your son was killed and the other ones didn't.
Yeah, they lived.
Which we'll talk about that because that's an issue. People ask me about it. You know, how do you feel about the driver and that kind of thing. So
and it's traumatic.
Yeah, and it's traumatic.
Yeah,
very traumatic. So Johnny, how about you? Tell us your story.
Well, first, Stephen, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Thank you, Johnny.
You know, as a lot of us would say, you know, we can't imagine, and then maybe when you're in the seat, at some point you have a feeling. A small feeling of it, but not a full comprehension. So my sympathies to you and to your family. For us, it happened younger. We were a couple that struggled for years to have children, and we were eventually blessed with a pregnancy, having triplets. And we were the most excited couple possible. So going from an infertile couple to a couple, 3 times blessed was just more than we could have ever dreamed of. Unfortunately, our children were born prematurely, and Nicholas, Mary, and Peter, we had 2 sons and a daughter, and our time with them was short-lived. Just that evening that they were born, and we had some tough decisions to make in terms of life support and those things, that we chose to just have quality time with them. And, we're with them as each of them passed, and, our lives changed. It got very dark, but that was after pure feelings of bliss and joy for even several hours after their death. And so we could talk about more about that.
So very different kinds of experience in a way, but I think you said something that's important, and that is you can never know another person's grief and how they are going to deal with it. But there's some similarities in some things. We have men in grief here, as I said. What's your thought about men supporting men? Do you need support, and what's your...
Yeah, I think anyone going through grief needs support, right? No matter their gender. But for a lot of men, we're taught not to cry. We're taught to kind of not emote and share our feelings or be vulnerable.
Right.
But what I've learned in this process is that our vulnerability is our strength. And I have the good fortune of having a great therapist that helped me get to the point where I am today. I'm 3 years and 9 months into this process. And I'm just grateful to be standing.
Yeah, isn't that true? You're not sure you're going to live at the beginning. How can you deal with pain when it really hits you fully?
Well, I'm wondering if that's why you walk on. Because you're not only standing, but you're walking on.
Yeah, the title has multiple meanings.
Okay.
We started a scholarship to honor Jake. He wanted to go to the University of South Carolina, follow in my footsteps. So we created a walk-on scholarship at the University of South Carolina for football players.
Oh, wow.
And then we created a second scholarship, actually it was the first one, with Red Cloud Indian School on Pine Ridge Indian Reservation for young children there that want to pursue college. And that also has been named the Walk-On Scholarship. And it's taken on greater meaning. Yeah, I needed to walk on from this. We all suffer, and we all need to find a way to walk on. So it's kind of become this catchphrase, if you will, but that's empowered all of us to find a way.
Well, in your book, too, Johnny, is about moving on. Give us the name of your book again.
Life is hard, but I'll be okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
which kind of reminds me of Walk On a little bit. I mean, just that, you're going to survive.
Right. When you're in the midst of it, for me, it was, I couldn't even imagine the position that we were in, much like you, Stephen, where, you find yourself at a point in life where the magnitude of the loss is larger than you can imagine. And so, for me, the emotional side was, in being a man and dealing with it, maybe was easier for me because I was taught to cry. Being a full-blooded Italian, I think we're so emotional. My dad especially, of course my mom as well, but was very good about getting emotions out. And so that was not a challenge for me. Maybe it was the challenge of letting too much out and feeling so much that other people didn't know what to do with a man expressing that much emotion.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, for both of you. Did you feel like people were less supportive because, okay, you're a guy now, let's stop with the tears, or did you feel like that message was out there or no?
I definitely knew that people didn't understand. I had somebody extremely close to me, say on their first birthday, when I was emotional, I was at work and being emotional, and she said, "Is that still hard for you?"
Wow.
And I really realized then, and I wasn't angered by it, maybe a little hurt, but the thought was, it's okay that she doesn't understand how I feel. I would never want her to understand how I feel. I wouldn't want her to go through that. And so if for her, the idea was that I could move on from it more gracefully or easier than I was okay with that. It didn't put me back at all. I did become mindful over time that I did need to talk about it a lot. maybe more than my wife needed to, and we grieved differently that way, but respected the way that each of us had to deal with it. And so I realized that I needed to be careful of just not making it so conversational because I needed that, because I also wanted to respect the position that other people were in, that's a heavy topic to bring on to someone, and many don't know how to process that.
Yeah.
Finally, talking to men who had gone through this, dads, was really helpful because we instantly related. You almost spoke each other's unspoken language. You could say something and just nod and just be like, yeah, I get it.
Now, how did you find those?
They reached out. You know, I was very lucky that dads reached out, and
Wow.
a handful.
So they saw your book and reached out.
Oh,
to
even
you?
before, when the news broke of Jake dying, I had two people in our community who had lost sons, excuse me, reached out, and we took walks on the beach and just talked and met once a month and just
Wow.
kind of connected.
In a group or just individual?
One-on-one.
One-on-one. Nice.
But it was helpful.
We had,
Because you feel alone, right?
Yeah.
You feel alone in those circumstances.
well, I was thinking about you, and then I was thinking about my son, because, and this, people knew him. He was 17. So people grieved with me, whereas you didn't get that, community grief, right? I mean, it's kind of, when people grieve with you about the same person, you just are able to talk about it a lot, and that kind of thing. But you wouldn't have that with the triplets.
No, we didn't. What we shared with other people was the dreams and the hopes that we had for their lives. And, at the time, infant death is a little different. I don't think people know how to deal with it. There was, some comments that were, well-intentioned, but a big swing and a miss of, well,
Yeah.
at least you didn't get to know them.
I was going to say anything
yeah.
that starts with at least.
Yeah,
Stop.
yeah, that's stop right there.
At least
That's
you're
right.
young. At least you can have kids. At least I can only imagine all the. I may have had a couple miscarriages, and the at least start to come in. But with all losses, I think they do, right?
Yeah, they didn't understand, and there's part of you that wants to make them understand that no, we held our kids and
Yeah,
we watched them
right,
breathe
yeah.
and we watched
They
them
were-
take
We
those
had
last
to
breaths.
really
And
for them to come
yes,
home.
I mean,
You had their names.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think you're both bringing up a very similar thing. And what you said, Johnny, you grieve the future that you're never going to have. So there's just milestones all the time happening where you're like, my kids aren't here.
I was thinking about these friends, as I said. Sometimes they're a pain in the neck. I found Scott's friends sometimes wanted support from me. They would come over to the house, and my husband hated it, and I thought it was fine. And so, but that reminds me of the fact that I found myself sometimes, I would work so hard to get up in the morning, and my husband would be down, or he'd be down. He'd be up and I would be down. No way. I mean, it's really, in a marriage, it's difficult. It can
Yeah.
be difficult days.
I can relate to that. So Jake's birthday, his 20th birthday was Monday, and all his buddies who are in college now, sophomores, came over, and it's a bittersweet moment. You want to see them, right? And I love all of them, but it's obvious that someone's missing in the room, right?
Right.
And so it's
And you
great.
feel like you have to support them.
Yeah, and it's great to see them, but when they leave, it's like it's like a piano just dropped on
Well,
you.
and I would think you would look and think, Jake would have been a sophomore in college. He's not here. He should have been a sophomore in college.
Yeah,
And I know I've thought that about my brother many times.
totally.
Well, I'm sure you think about the
Yes.
triplets too. Where would they be right now?
Yeah, and as we've gone through all of those, I mean, for us, it's been 28 years. And, as much as I've loved the idea of thinking about what they would have been, I had to find peace in exactly what and who they were for the time that they were and find significance in that.
Yeah.
And because, as I thought, I've talked to a dear friend who lost a son suddenly at 9 years old, and I've, talked to her about when I said, how great was it being James's mom, and, her face lights up and she has all these great memories, and I'm envious of those great memories, even knowing the exponential pain that would be if they lived to be 9, but she has 9 years of those memories. And so what we've really tried to do is, number one, accept that those dreams were gone, but at the same time, just rest back in the gratitude of we were their parents, we are their parents, and their life, albeit short, is of significance because even, Stephen, the work that you're doing honoring Jake, and the people that it's helping, that brings such significance to Jake's life. And of course, we could never say that, my kid's at a day old and yours at 16 is enough time, but we can glorify and be honored with the time that we got. And that idea of always wanting more was something that I really had to get in check with because we weren't getting more.
Right.
I had someone tell me, you should be grateful you had Jake for 16 years. And when that first came to me,
you hate
it
that.
hit like a brick, right? I was like,
You do
no.
not want to hear
But
that.
a year and a half later, I was lying on the grass just looking up at the clouds, and I remember feeling this sense of gratitude. Thank God I did have Jake in my life for 16 years.
Yeah.
Like, he made me better.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine life without him. So at least if that's all I was going to get, then I had to accept that and be grateful for it.
Right. Yeah. That's a big challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So you both had. I remember going, to Scott's room and going back. How you had the triplets beds already. Everything. You had to go, back to that empty room, and that's a real challenge of how you deal with all that. How long did you keep his stuff the way it was and all that?
We kept it until our foster daughter arrived. And we literally had like 48 hours notice, and we put it off. We didn't want to touch the room, and we went in and did it in a couple hours, my wife and I, and kind of put a female touch on it for the arrival of our foster daughter.
How did you get the foster daughter? Tell us about that.
We got a call. We had put a word out within our church community that if anybody ever knew of a child needing a home, that we'd be interested. And we went on vacation, and we had just arrived in Barbuda, and I got a text from our minister saying, "Hey, there's this young girl. She's a student athlete. She comes from a troubled background." And I didn't even read the rest of the text. I just wrote yes.
Wow.
And then I went and talked to my wife.
That's right. We share that. Yeah.
Well, tell us about your bringing a child into the home. It's a different way that you did.
That's right. It is. Steve and I share that. I guess just desire to fix something. So for us, after Nicholas, Mary, and Peter died, my wife became pregnant with twins. After that, and we ended up miscarrying the twins about 3 weeks apart. So it was really two miscarriages there. And when we were leaving the hospital after her surgery for the DNC, we were coming home, and I said to her, honey, we need to adopt. And she just wasn't there and wasn't ready, understandably.
Yeah.
Her mind, right? Totally insensitive on my part. And she just said, I'm not ready for that. And I said, well, no one's handing us a baby today, so you can take your time to get ready, and I'll do all the work. I'll do all the paperwork. I'll do all the phone calls. And she had done so much of the work in trying to conceive for all those years, and all the shots I was giving her, and everything that she went through. A full delivery, for Nicholas, Mary, and Peter, and just everything. So I said, let me take this on, and by the grace of God, within 6 weeks, our son Bo was born, and. She got ready quickly, and she was, so open and ready for it because we were in such a dark place, and he brought a lot of light.
And I'm thinking again, you probably had to take the room and make it into his room, a room, right?
We did. And ironically, the theme that we chose for Nicholas, Mary, and Peter's nursery was angels.
Wow.
And so, we had angels painted in the sky of the vaulted ceiling in the bedroom and clouds, and so it became very different than when we brought Bo home, at a couple days old, and put him, in his crib, in their crib, in his crib, and he's looking up at those angels that were in there,
They're
and
watching
so
over him.
That's right. So it really. It was very foreshadowing, potentially, that, we chose that as the theme, maybe a different or unusual theme for a nursery, but it served us very well.
Wow. So you said the words, I hear so much about men, we're fixers. We want to fix it. Talk about that.
kind of programmed that way, aren't we? To protect. That was something I had to deal with. It's just the protection, right? Right away, I went with, I failed my family, I failed my son. I didn't protect him, but I wasn't there, and I got around to, letting go of that eventually. But yeah, you do want to fix it. It hurts to see your wife in pain, right? And Jake's little brother suffering. So I think we're just, it's just something we're programmed to do, and we feel the need as a protector and as the father.
That's right. I think, we all play roles in our marriage, and my wife is the role of the steady hand and the calm one, and my anxiety is off the charts, and my OCD is off the charts. And so I thought when we were younger that I needed to rev her up a little bit because, she was a little chilled back there, and I wanted, us to accomplish more and do more, so I needed to pull her along. And it really turned out that, she was exactly where we needed to be, and I needed to kind of get to her peace level. And so, but there is in that the protection that I wanted to have, that I did feel responsible because I thought, my wife was still working full time, carrying triplets and a very complicated pregnancy, and we just didn't see, what was coming, and me thinking I should have anticipated this, should have been harder. It's not natural to carry 3 babies at one time, and, as she was getting bigger and bigger, it was, should have been more warning signs, and I didn't protect her and I didn't protect my kids. And that is something that I carried, for quite a long time. And of course, my wife has her own guilt and thoughts associated with, her side of it. And, ultimately, affixing blame or trying to get to a point where we can own something, it didn't help us with anything. We just had to accept what had happened and learn life lessons to make us stronger for the future.
Well, it's interesting hearing you all because as a sibling, when my brother died, my mother called me at 2 a.m. and the first thing she said to me was, "I'm sorry I didn't protect him. And I'm sorry I didn't save him." I go, "Mom, you weren't even there. He was in a car with our cousin. I don't get..." But she felt like, as a parent, we protect our children, and, so it's interesting hearing all this.
Yeah, for sure. So what advice would you give to a guy who's had a child die in the past couple of years, or maybe 6 months, or right away? What advice would you have?
Be easy on yourself. Get help wherever that is, whether that's family, your minister, church, community, therapist. I think it's important to have an outlet because there's a lot of hard feelings that are stirring around in there, and it's hard to make sense of them. I was a basket case for a year. I mean, I don't even remember much of it. It's like a blackout. We heard the news over the phone and in the car from a doctor, and it was just like from that second on, everything just became black. It's not easy, but you gotta crawl towards the light. To just do whatever you do to get to the next day. Work in small increments. And understand that everyone's journey is their journey. So no matter what I would say to somebody, they're going to have to live their own, but you can definitely take comfort from someone that's gone through it. But sadly, grief is a very personal journey.
Yeah. I want to, go ahead, Johnny.
I certainly agree with everything Stephen said there, and I would just add that as a married couple, grieve together, work hard to grieve together and not grieve apart. Yeah. And so give graces to each other when, I finally might have been having a day where I'm like, okay, I can get out of bed and I can stand up and I can go face the day. And then I look over and she's not in that place. She woke up in a bad space. Right. And then there is that feeling of, it kind of pulls you back, right? And I did that to her many, many times as well. And so it's giving grace to each other that you make the commitment to grieve together from the beginning. We were very blessed by acquaintances that came the night before the funeral to our house unannounced after everyone was protecting us and keeping people away. Probably, you try to, people want to be there, but you need your time. And this couple showed up, and again, we did not know them well, but with the best of intentions, and they helped us so much because they said they lost a baby at a week old, and they were feeling for us, and for them it had only been maybe 5-6 years before us, and they said, just start together. And so they gave us that advice that we just kept grabbing each other's hands and saying, at times, I'm going down.
Yeah.
and she might be going down with me, or other times, she's going up and she's pulling me up. And so that's what I would say.
There's a myth out there that I try to dispel with people more than once, and that is, and I've heard therapists say it, and I've read it in books, there is not a high divorce rate among people who lose children.
Yeah, because the divorce rate in general is 50%. It's not any higher among people that have had children die.
And there's no...
But there is a myth out there.
Yeah,
Yes.
And it's in books, which is very disturbing. I've had clients that come in and they're really concerned that they're going to get divorced, and
Yeah, well, Johnny makes a great point. Men and women grieve completely differently. And so to stay together is vital, right? And I remember seeing my wife just completely distraught for months, and there was nothing I could do to change that. And at first I struggled with that mightily. I wanted to help her in some way that would just make her day easier, and there was nothing I could do. Our therapist gave us a great term. He said, practice vigilant mercy towards each other.
Like
And
that.
when you look at each other, imagine someone that's just absolutely on fire, maybe throwing up in front of the toilet, and just that's how bad it is. So you got to have vigilant mercy for each other and for others that ask the dumb questions or say things that kind of land wrong. But what Johnny said is so true. You just got to lock in and commit to it and say, no matter what, we're going to ride through this storm together.
That's right. And it's not just about saving your marriage, because for the people that, do or don't stay married, it's also an opportunity to cement your marriage stronger and to have a shared grief that only the other knows.
Exactly, I've said that about it.
And you can really build your foundation of your relationship from that, because really once you've gone through that, truly, what's a challenge now in your marriage,
Nothing.
right? I mean, couples that argue over the paint color of a wall or, wanting to go here for a vacation or
Details.
Yeah. None of that matters. And so it's really an opportunity to cement something that you've shared and that you created.
I was just going to ask them if they could, where we can find them,
Yes.
where people can find you.
I'm at StephenPanus.com, and the book is Walk On.
Walk on.
JohnnySirpilla.com, and the book is Life is Hard, but I'll be okay.
All right, get those books.
Yes, thank
right.
you so much.
Well,
to
Heidi
both
and
of
I
you.
want to thank you for being on the show, and we also want to thank everybody for joining us today. And we want to say, if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.